We'd like to welcome each and every individual to Voices of Integrity for Marriages. And today's question is, what's the secret to 40 years of marriage and being more in love than you've ever been before? All right, Rosanna, take it away.
Well, one, to have a sense of humor would be true for that one.
What are you saying?
I'm saying that having a sense of humor probably does help when things might get a little difficult or a little tenuous.
Okay, so you weren't saying that more in love now than we've ever been before. That's that I was like, is that true?
It's a different kind of love. I think that when you first get married, there's these rose-colored glasses that are on, and you don't see everything. And now I'm seeing things, and I'm like, okay, so how do I work this out? So it's more of a different kind of love than when you first start out getting in your life of marriage. So that's my thoughts.
You guys can jump in and, you guys can participate and ask questions. So Rosanna and I just celebrated, what was it? 5 days ago-ish.
Yep.
And our 40th anniversary. We were planning on going to Italy for our 40th. But instead, we're sticking around we had one little one, so we had number 9 come along, grandchild, and now 10's soon approaching. So both Rosanna and I would far rather be around for grandchildren than to go to Italy. So maybe later in the year we'll go to Italy. We'll see on that. But so we went away for a weekend. And so does anyone have any questions for Rosanna and I?
I have a question.
Yes.
During your 40th anniversary, what is the best scenario when you celebrated it?
What is the best scenario for what?
When you celebrate your anniversary.
So what is the best thing that happened on our celebration? Is that what you're asking?
Yeah.
Rosanna, go ahead.
I think it was good conversation and an adventurous spirit.
Okay. Interesting. I would say that we had significant conversations. It felt productive and fun for me, but it was hard. Really, it was hard. So it was really hard. So other questions?
Yeah, I have another question.
You can just ask. You don't have to tell us each time you have a question. Just share the question.
So throughout your marriage, what is the biggest challenge that both of you face?
Got it. So I got my answer. Rosanna, what's yours?
I would say staying in flow, even in the difficult times.
Okay. So I would say our differences of our personality differences as it relates to raising children. And then the things that life threw at us were really hard. Like Rosanna was 19 when we got married. I was 20, and we had some hard stuff thrown at us based on choices other people made that made it much more difficult much more difficult for our marriage. Other questions?
Um, in your marriage, what makes your marriage makes strong?
Go ahead. So Rosanna, you can go ahead and start, and then I'll share mine after you share yours.
I would say not giving up when it got hard. Uh, being open to growing. I would say that Mark carried a lot of the heavy loads in our marriage, maybe still does. But not, I guess, just not giving up.
Yeah, so I was going to say the commitment, a vow. So my parents didn't let me quit things. Like when we start something, we start sports, we finish sports. We start a job, we finish a job. You just didn't quit. Like it's built into the very DNA. The Boersma name was not a big thing. Like it's, oh, be proud of Boersma. So Boersma is like, but there's some of the things like Boersma's, they, they don't give up. They don't quit. At least that's what I picked up. So it's like, you just don't quit. You make a vow, you follow through. If you can't in life, if you can't follow through on the small vows, don't think you're going to follow through on big ones. You just won't. Based on the death of our son 4 years ago, that has an 85% chance of divorce. So 85% of couples, married couples that go through that end up in divorce, and I understand why. And if we had not built the strength earlier in our marriage, the pipeline would not have been strong enough to handle that. So that I would say is probably number one is commitment. I think 2 is hard work. Like it's not like it's just going to be hard. It's just going to be hard. It's just going to be hard. Probably the hardest thing you'll ever do. Maybe. And so we had lots of fun, a lot of had vacations. I think the first 3 years of our marriage we had 7 vacations, and we were in college, so we were poor college students. Some of them cost a lot of money, at least at the time. It seemed like was a lot at the time, and others not so much, but we did that. A ton of TJJS, so Tarzan Jane Jungle Sex. It was just, and we waited until marriage. And for 40 years, it's just been better. Sex has just been, it's just amazing. It's absolutely amazing. So if you're not married, I would encourage you wait for sex until marriage. That'd be we could have a separate podcast on that. But I'm telling you, it's just amazing in marriage. Sex in marriage is just absolutely phenomenal. It's just so much fun. It's such a stress reliever. It just connects. It's just, disciplines, I would say, date night every Friday night for decades. Like it's just, learning to communicate, learning to heal, learning to take ownership. Don't be a victim. Learning to be thankful, learning to be humble. Like a life vision, I think for me, it's like I had a vision of what my marriage was going to be, and then it's what my marriage was, and it's very different. Better, worse, different, harder, much harder, much, much harder than anything I had anticipated. The amount of pain and suffering and hurt and anguish. I mean, it's just like, you got to be kidding. This is hard work. Like when 10 years in marriage, people got divorced at 30, and I couldn't understand, how can you be married for 30 years and then get divorced? Like, that makes no sense. But then when we hit our 30 year, I'm like, oh, it makes sense. I totally get it. I totally get it. I understand. And from 30 to 40, that was brutal. There were some really brutal things that happened, in that time frame. And so I think that if somebody's not clear on their life vision, they don't see the pain, they don't see the struggle, they don't see how hard, like, you can seem like you're doing everything right, and it can still go south really bad. So if you do something stupid, as a husband, you kind of expect your marriage to go ahead and go get messed up. But if you make good choices as a husband and your life and your marriage gets messed up, it's like, what in the world? So how committed are you both in the good times and the bad times? Great questions, Kent. Kent, you can keep asking questions for other people.
Okay. So if you given a chance, like throughout your marriage journey, if you're given a chance, what would it be? What you want to change? Like at least 3 things you want to change.
So are you talking going forward, or if we could change the past?
Yeah.
Both, or one or the other?
Just one.
Do you want what we change the past? If we could go back and change the past,
Yeah.
what would we change? Or do you want going forward, what would we change? Because they're very different questions.
If you'll be given a chance to change your past, what would it be?
That's going to be an interesting one. Rosanna.
I think being more honest with Mark would have changed a lot of things.
So for me, it's almost like my brain can't process that question. Why is that? Because when you look at, the timeline, you have, the present, you have the short term, and you have the future and the past. And so years ago, decades ago, I thought about what's the purpose of the past? And so the purpose of the past is to go ahead and have fun. There's two purposes, I think. One is to have fond memories, and the other is to go ahead and learn from the past, like lessons. So probably at about 25 years of marriage, 20 years of marriage, right around about 20 to 25, maybe 23 years of marriage, we went into a family counselor. And the family counselor, so we had 7 kids, and family counselor, we laid everything out to him and said, this is what's going on. And he just looked at us and he just said, I've been in practice, counseling for over 23 years. He was a pastor before that for a couple of decades. And then he had, 3 PhDs in counseling and psychology and family counseling. He said, in all my years, I've never seen a family go through what you guys have gone through. He said, so he's a Christian counselor. And he said, it's like the devil is trying to destroy your family. It's like a war. It's like your family is out in the middle of the ocean, and there's pylons going deep into the bedrock. And it's like there's 4 of them going deep out there. And there's 4 cruise missiles that came. There's cruise missiles that came and just destroyed the pylons, and you and your family are out in the ocean. Like you're just out there floating, like there's nothing, everything's been destroyed. And I remember thinking when he told that, well, that's cool. Like, that's neat. I mean, I thought I was just being a wuss. I thought I was just being a wimp. I thought, well, people go through a lot worse than what we've gone through. And I related to back when I was 20 and Rosanna was 19, and the first thing that hit our marriage was just massive. And I went through that whole thing, and I kind of explained that whole thing to him, and he looked at me and he said, Mark, in all my years of practice, I've never heard anybody say what you said, ever. He said, so what I said is, I said, that situation just absolutely, just like a nuclear bomb, just boom, just blew me to pieces. And that was during engagement and then marriage. And I said, but when I look back at that situation, if I could choose to not go through that, I wouldn't, because it's made me the man I am. And I've got so many benefits from that situation. Now, granted, I'm not a masochist. Like, if I could be the man I am today without going through that pain, well, then I for sure would do that in a heartbeat. I mean, for sure, I don't want the pain, but I don't think I could be who I am today in understanding people, and especially women. And so I wouldn't have the heart that I do today. So if I had to choose, so a lot of times it's like, we don't really think about, we say, well, I'd like to change this. We don't really understand, we don't really understand the benefit that it gives us. I loved Rosanna's answer, because she was introspective and she's like, but I wouldn't say that. I wouldn't say that. Why? Because that helped me in crazy ways. But I'm glad she said it. I'm really glad she said it. So to me, Kent, great question. But I can see how all of those past things, like when I was growing up, my dad's a pastor, and so I was in church, and they'd go ahead and say, they'd show us a tapestry. So somebody's knitting, crocheting, or whatever they're doing, and they show us a tapestry and they show the back of it, and it's like all messy, and it's all messy. And I remember as a kid, people saying, that's your life. It's messy. I didn't cry then, because I didn't understand what that meant. And then they turn around and they see this beautiful tapestry. And it's like, you don't see what's going on in life. Like, you see all the mess, you experience all the mess. It's interesting. I don't know what it is. It's just interesting when Christians go ahead and say, hey, life is good, life is this, all's good, like all of this. And I wonder, is it really? And I wonder if it is, like, it's just, you see everything, you just, like, my life is beautiful. And I think a lot of times, and why is it so good? Well, I give God all the glory. Okay. And, I don't know. I'm not judging. It's just, I'm curious. Like, or is it your life? It's just, there's no battle. You're not in a battle. You're just like, Christians would be like, there's no enemy. The enemy doesn't want anything that you have in your life. You have nothing of significance. Like, there's no battle, because you're not a threat to the enemy. So if nobody's trying to take your family, your kids, your grandkids, your wife, your marriage, if nobody's trying to take that from you, nothing's happening. If there's no attack, like, are you really doing anything of significance? I don't know. I don't know the answer to that. And so yet another great question, Kent. Like, other people can't study there should be a podcast on training to interview people. Because you are a great interviewer. Wow. Good work. Anything else, Kent or anybody else have on anything on this?
I think I had one thing I wanted to add to that. One of the things on our trip was not thinking what I did wrong, but what can I learn from this?
Yeah, that was cool. Wow. I wish somebody had taught us both that, 40 years ago. Like that was massive. Just absolute massive. So Rosanna and I have very different ways of thinking. Some of these ways are amazingly good and they're different. Others of these ways I think are destructive. So for me, I look at it as I'm always making mistakes. Like I'm always making mistakes. I just am. I just am. I just perpetually making mistakes. And so I'm always learning. So like if somebody says you're a terrible dad, no, that's kind of cool. Like where would you say I'm a terrible dad? Or I'm a terrible husband? Like if Rosanna says you're a terrible husband, or my kids say you're a terrible dad, okay, like I'm with you. Where? Like where are you seeing that? And so I'm curious, in the flawless thinking, curious questions. I'm curious, like why? Mark, you're arrogant, you're selfish, you're not generous, you're whatever. Okay, why? Where? Like where? Like where is that? And I don't feel attacked. I just like, okay, somebody's made an observation. I agree. I don't agree. There's some percentage of truth. Where is it? Because I want to grow. Like I want to grow like crazy. And so Rosanna, on the other hand, when somebody says something about her, she takes it as criticism. So people will tend not to say things to her. So they won't, so she had somebody, she's been doing a daily post for how long?
2 years.
2 years. So she's doing a daily post for 2 years. And there was a significant other of a family member that yesterday went ahead and said, can you take me off your daily post? It's like a few words. It's a sentence. It's not like it was I just kind of roll my eyes and kind of just laugh. And she was hurt, but it was fine. She just asked, so can I ask why? And the individual said, it's good to see you growing, but it's not really benefiting me. And she hasn't replied to that yet, I don't think. Maybe she said thanks, but it's like, now I'm curious. So is it not benefiting you because you're not growing? She wouldn't say she's not going to challenge. I mean, just even asking why, like, why did you, which is great. And, the individual responded, which is also great. But the individual may not want to be challenged. Like, is it not benefiting? Is it not relevant to your life because you're not growing? Like, I don't know. Like, so the individual doesn't like to be questioned. They don't like to be challenged. And so they're training everybody around them. Don't challenge me. Don't ask hard questions. Like, just don't. Just let me be who I am. Always been who I've always been and will always be that. The same as God. The same yesterday, today, and forever. And so So the mindset is if we have a closed mind, anything somebody says to us is going to be, we're going to be defensive about it. Like we're going to be, because we lack confidence. We don't want to grow. We want to be closed-minded. And so if Rosanna changes that perspective where she's open and she will get more criticism in her life. She just will. More people will criticize her. I think that's good because that will make her stronger. So the more criticism we get, I think the stronger we get, which is totally contrary to our culture today. Don't criticize people. Don't say things. Don't challenge them. Don't make them feel uncomfortable. Don't frustrate them. Just create where there's no growth, where everybody's at no growth. So if you're listening to this podcast and you want to tap in to Rosanna's daily post, Rosanna, how would they do that?
They could email me or text me. Would you like me to give that information out?
Oh,
Text 630-649-4059 or email rboersma88@gmail.com.
I hope you write fast, or you can pause it and go back and listen to it 3 or 4 times. Either way, she's pretty quick, like boom, boom, boom. Anyways, if you're listening to the rebroadcast of this, or as you go through it, share this with 2 other people. Like Kent, he's the star today. He's the one that asked the questions. Way to go, Kent. High five it, buddy. You rock. Like those questions were just amazing. If you have any questions, connect with the individual who invited you to participate in today's session, or you can call toll free 888-230-2300. That's 888-230-2300. Outside the U.S., 630-393-9909. And always remember, we can accomplish so much more together than we ever could on our own. Have an amazing day. Bye-bye.